And we Campbell here, and she has a question for you about some kind of social awkward moments. I'll let her explain.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
So Greensboro has a lot of museums, but it has even more American history buffs. Problem is, I'm not one. Whenever I'm in circles of people talking about history, my eyes get wide and I panic. I pray that no one will ask me about historical topics, so what I do is I just avoid eye contact and I head straight to the bar. But I need a better strategy. What should I do if I find myself in a conversation with a history buff that goes over my head?
I want you to look right at the person and do this right here. They ask you something about the past. You say, I don't really care for slavery.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Yes. Oh my God. Oh yeah.
It works every damn time. That's what I do when I'm sitting around a bunch of socialites and they start talking about the past and stuff. That's my line. I just say it and walk off. I have my little drink in my hand. I just say it and walk off. I don't really care for slavery and walk off and leave them sitting. I don't give a damn if they talking about Christopher Columbus. I don't give a damn if they talking about a treaty. I don't give a damn about an amendment, a bill. I don't care what the subject is. It could be prohibition. I don't care what the subject is. When you get through saying it, and I don't know what the hell you talking about, my favorite line is, I don't give a damn about.
And over the past few weeks, we've grieved together as the Black community has endured more senseless acts of racial terror and violence. At YouTube, we believe Black lives matter, and we all need to do more to dismantle systemic racism. We're committed to doing better as a platform to center and amplify Black voices and perspectives. And we're working to ensure Black users, artists, and creators can share their stories and be protected from hateful, white supremacist, and bullying content. We know there is much more work.
We have shooting after shooting after shooting in this country, and we talk about the Second Amendment. And I would like to have an uncomfortable moment with the Second Amendment. Maybe people in this room are familiar with this history. My jaws dropped when I read it. By the time the U.S. Constitution was ratified, hundreds of slave uprisings had occurred across the South. And in many areas, blacks outnumbered whites. The only way you keep a group of people who are more than the group of people you're in, the only way you keep them under control is by violence. It's with guns. State militias were used to both prevent and put down slave uprisings, and Sally Hayden, who wrote this book, says slavery can only exist in the context of a police state, and the enforcement of that police state was the explicit job of the state militias. This is what the state militias wore. And an uncomfortable truth is that modern-day police departments had, as part of their formation, the history of state militias. I'm not saying that modern-day police departments are slave catchers. There are other people who will say that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is this is part of our history, and ignoring it and pretending that it doesn't exist doesn't make sense, because one of the things I'm going to ask you to think about is how information gets passed down from generation to generation to generation so that people understand how they can live in the world. One of the things I want you to think about is from the early 1800s, that badge to black and brown people meant power, it meant violence, and it meant death. So go to the history about.
Good afternoon. This is Rudolf from Germany. I am addressing today specifically Afro-American people. I might be probably the first white man, Aryan German man, who is admitting something to you. I took a long time to think about this video which I'm showing you, a very short one, about the white race. Many of you dark-skinned people, in America mainly, have had a suspicion for a very long time. White people are not really human. And this suspicion has been around for a long, long time. And like any suspicion which is around for a long, long time, there is a little bit of truth to it. I want to admit today to you that white people originating from Northern Europe are called not aliens, they are called Aryans. Sorry about that, my brain don't function so well today. These white people are not really human from this earth like black people are, Indian people are, Asian people are. Yes, they are all humans. We white people are actually a minority, and we are, let's face the truth, also called the tall whites. Not all of us are tall, not all of us are completely white, but in general that's what it is. And as some of you may know, the tall whites are not really earthly human, but we're coming out of space, out of another galaxy. We are not human as the rest of the human race. We came here from another star, we white people, in order to control the world. We white people all have a secret code, a secret language under each other. We know, no matter how nice we pretend to be, we all stick together in order to control the other races, particularly the black race. And I am feeling so bad about it by now that I had to speak out here on this video and admit it. White people are not human. White people, including myself, all stick together, know the truth which they do not want to admit to you. White people are out of space. We come from another galaxy. We all know our home planet, which we don't want to reveal because we don't want to be attacked. And we have no good intention with you. We do not want to share our wealth with you. We do not want to share our knowledge with you. You have been mistreated hundreds of years ago, and this is very, very bad. And your chances in life, to the most of you, many of you have no chance in life. You can sit and wait for work on a corner with your other friends, and work will never arrive to you. It's very, very hard, I know. And we rich people, we white people, we alien people don't want to share what we have with you, so you have a good time. This is my testimony in public. White people are from another planet.
Hello and welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of YouTube. I am your host, the whiteologist, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and this is Black Minds News Report. Black Minds News is the report. Articulate, transmit, communicate, insinuate, develop, investigate, decode, unveil, spread the news, whether by news, video, website, or quotes from publications. As I articulate this information at the creator universe, be here heart, soul, mind, and spirit. Because why? The truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created this land that you call the United States, we, the today's children, offspring, and present generation, we give honor to our ancestors. You know what the motto of my show is? I'm never gonna tell you what I heard. I'm only gonna tell you what I know. Today's date is July the 5th, 2020. Welcome to another Black MINDZ News production. What we got on the menu for today, we're going to talk about a case that had went into appeal that we all had seen, that the first verdict was given, but then they had to appeal based on what took place. News came across, and we will go across that story as we get into it. It was a story that was done in Baltimore. Another story is going to be about, well, there were some black protesters, they say, seem to stir up the crowd or stir up those people who seen them, and it looked very frightening. Maybe you didn't hear about it, but we on Black MINDZ News are going to show you something about that. We're going to talk about also the fact that the individual who got caught as being a vandal of the Andrew Jackson statue and the story behind it. So again, this is Black MINDZ News. Stay tuned as we get into this broadcast. Hey, how's y'all doing, everybody? Again, this is your host, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. First and foremost, want to say what's good to my fam, my subscribers, my day one. Welcome again to another Black MINDZ News report. Take my hat off kindly to each and every one of you. I hope everything is going well with yours. And Black MINDZ News, again, thank each and every one of you. And new subscribers, got some, because in a way, I got some, but they taking them away. But there's other things that show something else. And so I want to say what's good to my new subscribers. Welcome to the Black MINDZ News family. Passerbys, we have to click on this video due to the thumbnail or the title in itself that enticed you. Welcome to the Black MINDZ News report. Been in the business since 2012. Been in the business for 8 years. Can't get 50 views. Ain't that something? I come on every day. Went live. Can't get but 27. Go upload. Can't get 45. So if they want to make this check easy for me, be my guest. Oh, we gonna eat good when we get paid. So anyway, go down the aisle. Always got a grand opening. Happen to see something that make you feel some kind of way. Remember, the motto of my show is the truth. Don't need no partner. Now, right? So as you've seen the intro there, you've seen the show that Mr. Harvey, right, was posed by on the street interview about history, and coming from the state she was in, and there's a lot of historian buffs, and she is a little nervous when it starts to get to the true question about the American history, United States history, where she feels like it goes over her head, or she don't have the proper, let's say, answers to, articulate in the conversation. So she asks Mr. Men think like women, and say that whole nonsense. But she asked him, what would he do in that situation, right? And when this originally had broke, a lot of people was just like, but again, when you're in that kind of spotlight, in order for you to maintain that position, or you're going to have to do a lot of skinning and grinning and showing them hands, right? Right? So in the case that you heard Mr. Harvey say, I don't give a damn about slavery. If we can ask Mr. Harvey today that question, what would he be saying right now? Would he say the same thing, or was that just for the moment he got caught live on TV there, right? And we can see that he got cajoled and adulated for his response, and we've seen who was all in the audience, right? And it's just kind of like the whole answer that he gave is to, and as a person who is black, right? A person who's black, and to say the things that he has said, as he didn't give no care about slavery, and anytime somebody had that kind of conversation that he said that goes over his head, or he just don't want to have a conversation, he just kind of walks away, and slavery has no relevance in his life. And using him as the example here is like saying there's many of our people who are out here just like that when it comes to talking about our history and what has been done to us, and the advocacy, and try to always instill upon our family members and children and so forth about to never forget. Again, as you see on your screen there, remembrance is freedom, right? The freedom is coming within the remembrance. Now, a person who says the things that, as Mr. Harvey has said, has not given homage to those who sacrificed themselves to allow for him to have what he considered to be an opulent life, right? And so you may appease to those that, again, who give you and sign your check in the audience that makes that show. But as an individual, as a person, you lose something as part, as we might say, is, as your human soul, right? You don't recognize that. And so it's funny how at that particular time, when that was stated, if we was asked today, maybe that might be the same thought pattern as today. Now, again, it's not like it's 24 hours, 365 days that one has to, have those conversations and talk like that. But when that, question, or when it is in the mode and time for it to be, how can one take that and throw it away and not look at where you are presently right now as to the people who laid blood, sweat, tears, anguish, horror, and so forth, for you to just to chide off as if like that has no relevancy in your life, and you care to even be lobotomized and be done within in your brain, right? So that's what happens when you look at people of that mindset, and then look at how sometimes that you have people who advocate in this black corner of YouTube who are trying to help certain people to break certain mindsets and understanding so that they can come to the true understanding of self and what you are and who you come from. And that's not a thing to be able to be shamed about. And those people who feel uncomfortable with those kind of conversations, there's nothing, that's not a guilt by you, right? Everybody else can say not to forget. Everybody else has memorabilia and history and statues of commemorating of those who they would consider of their forefathers and ancestors. So why is it always the negative aspect when we deal with it, or feel like we're putting a burden on people because we talk about it, right? So then you see that the professor who was talking about the history and about something he said that I felt that I thought was good, peaceful starting the show, which is the fact that, as I've done in the shows prior to, for those who might be new who didn't know, that again, we did the show and we talked about the history of the slave patrol, and he was going over and saying that in history, when you seen that there was the uprisings, right, that was from the ancestors, which we are, BADOS, Black American Descendants of Slaves. Some people want to say enslaved, right? They have a problem with saying slave. They weren't slave. Well, we don't know their name, the title in itself. And the thing is, I want to say this too. There's a lot of people who make mockery of we BADOS because we have taken on that which people deem as negative, shameful, abhorrent, right? that we take titles of black, we take titles of slave, right? We take the things that everybody else seems to run and hide and want to give us explanations as to why you shouldn't or wouldn't be that because of who they are and how they're built. But we're built different from you. This is not to be divisive. This is just we built different from you. If I look back, right, and see who I and what I come from, and that is what it is, I have no problem with accepting that and taking that and wholeheartedly bring that into the essence of my soul and carry it with pride. And then because if it makes you who I talk about it to feel some kind of way, that's not my problem. So you've seen, as the professor talked about, how when you see a people who using the gun as a deterrent and becomes a police state, what he said in history has something to do with, we have to think about what he has said. When a people get to a populace, a population, and you feel threatened, this is when you start seeing this abundance of what we have been seeing over the last several years. Have y'all noticed that no one has talked about anymore about this so-called census? Have anybody noticed that? That the census has not been talked about, even though we're supposed to be, and then they got some other criterias now, but they have been kind of quietly not talking about the census. Well, why are you talking about it, Mr. Blow Your Mind? Well, I'm talking about the 2020 censuses because those who have been paying particular attention and notice when you start looking at the data and start realizing that for decade after decade after decade, we only stayed between 12 and 13%. We never had any real growth, but we had other people who are migrating in, funneling underground, reverse underground railroad, and their numbers surpassed us. Yes, we have the indoctrination of self-hate that was amongst us and a lot of other things that were kind of designed that was put upon us. But that didn't mean that we're not replenishing those who were dying, right? And so with that being said is that if we weren't paying attention to where we are now, and a lot of people like to say in a woken state, right? And paying attention politically, historically, all right, and all the things that now bringing people to a full consciousness, or a lot of people who are waking up, what's on the line right now as to what is the true numbers of the nation. And what the true numbers will show is that if you don't do this census, but then there's all these other things that are manifesting itself as to the headlines of people being killed and so forth, then when this is all over and done, how much y'all want to bet your last bottom dollar that we're probably going to come out saying they're going to be around the same percentage again after 10 years again. We're going to be the same percentage once again. And other people either going to maintain and another group is going to grow. Now, one group has to maintain because, again, as it's talked about 2045, 2050, that a particular people is going to fall into this category of not number one as populous, but number two and maybe possibly number three, right? Because again, he who controls the pen controls the information, right? So a lot of people will like to say that I use the data and the data don't lie, but again, we've been here as long as we've been here. A lot of people have lied about a lot of things and tried to act as if like now that you are revealing the lie, becoming upset and angry about it. So what is the actual true numbers? And then as the professor said, that in history has shown when this happens, when, as they say, they use the South versus the North. They say in the South we overpopulated, as if there was no slavery in the North, right? So we outnumbered those. We was at one time at 20% of the population in the South. That they said, well, we outnumbered them, right? And with that being said, there was the retaliation. There was the use of the gun, right? To quell and kill off. Because why? As the professor said, to control, make it a police state. So we have to ask ourselves about all the stuff we've been seeing. And right now, the four let's say, part of the four confrontation, not gonna say confrontation, conversation, is that the fact that people talk about police reform, right, and all that stuff. And then we understand the history of what the police is, as the professor said. He said, well, I won't call it is the same as what it was, but that is the history, and we can't act like that is not part of the history. So I'm just taking that bit and piece, the part that he said that how the retaliation was about the overswelling of the population. And it's ironic we are 2020 with a census. We got a census right now. And are we going to get the true number when it's all said and done? So that was some fat to chew on, right? Think about that. Think about that. You know, we've been told 13, 12% for how long? How many decades? Yes, they'll sell it. Oh, you guys are having all the abortions, as if other people are not having abortions, especially people who are more populous than us. And we know if they doing, let's say, multicultural relationships, some of them know they can't come home with that mixed baby, right? So there's a lot of things that these abortion clinics that are not, sit right up inside of their communities, and we don't know where the numbers, where they go and whether they, are giving actual numbers, but we know that the face of abortion has always been our black women, right? So anyway, so since we're talking about this, the police, right, the slave patrol, here was a story that I seen that many of you probably already know about, but we're going to go over it anyway, because this is Black Mind News, and this is what we do over here. So we're going to go ahead and go into this, and I should be right back. Check this out. So we are back, right? So we see that the Black Lives Matter, they had the Florida police officers who were laughing and bragging on the video about shooting rubber bullets at protesters. You know I'm going to say that again, right? Black Lives Matter, we know it's the protests, right? That the Florida police officers laugh and brag on video about shooting rubber bullets at protesters, right? Now, we know everybody but the season that we're in right now, due to the simple fact that what happened on May 25th, 2020, that the country has gone into full mode protests of the George Floyd, killing, right? So we see in this video, we see that there's some Florida officers who were responding and got caught on camera laughing and bragging about shooting protesters with rubber bullets. Now, again, you know how when you at work and you with a partner, either somebody you know or met at the job and y'all can't cool with each other, then y'all at work and there's some things that going on, the camaraderie and, partnership, we understand that, right? But in policing based on the atmosphere and the low morale that should be amongst them. We see here that this video is showing them out there on the front line doing what police do, what they're paid to do, and trying to keep some law and order. Now, again, it looked like there's a group of protesters out there. This is in Fort Lauderdale. Now, this video goes back to May 31st because it came to light is because of what ended up happening, as I go in later and tell you about, right? So what we see that you seeing protesters who are tossing the tear gas, right, that are being, thrown at them, right? And they start picking up the canisters and throwing it back at them. And what we see is you see the police who are shooting. Now, they're not shooting live ammunition. What they're shooting is rubber bullets. Now, I have never been hit with a rubber bullet, but I'm pretty sure something projectile out at that kind of speed and velocity that if it hit you in certain, areas of vitalness, that could cause a lot of damage, if not death, right? Blind, maim, and a whole lot of other things, right? And so you see on that footage there, you see that it shows, again, probably a detective and an officer. The two guys, they got on their gear, but again, they end up talking about who they were because they end up identifying one of the other ones. You see him bragging to his boy, they get a little bump. Yeah, dog, you understand, right? And you can hear him say, he said, beat it, little fucker, right? Yeah, I hear you, little fucker, right? And that person who they identified, his detective name is, I think it's Zachary Barrow, right? Barrow. Or Barrow, right? And we see that he is just shooting rubber bullets at protesters, right? Now, you know how it is to be in the heat of the battle. And they doing what they have to do as police officers. But is what they doing appropriate for the situation? Yes, they protested, but people were always talking about constitutional rights and being able to, the protest free, all that stuff, right? But, because of people, again, they got a saying out there that I heard it say, pig in the blanket, something frying, a pig frying, some shit. They saying that they out there, the protesters out there saying shit like that, right? And so, so I'm pretty sure when you go to work that day, you can get up a lot of frustration because look at what they doing. They out there just shooting willy-nilly, right? Just letting loose rubber bullets. They just letting them go, right? Without, it's like, just imagine if you out there shooting like that. Okay, let's just say if they just looking at the video for just the simple fact that, okay, you got the police out there, they bragging, but they out there just letting loose. So it's kind of like a trigger happiness, right? It's like they out there just letting loose. I mean, this ain't like paintball, right? I mean, they out there just letting loose, just firing up on motors. Is that really necessary, right? And then wonder why that y'all had this bad rapport right now is because y'all getting caught a lot of times with y'all pants down, right? And now you're getting a hot mic on you and everything. So now it's kind of like you didn't even recognize, right? So you see in the video that the other one, I think the officer they identified, his name was Jamie Chapman. You see him when he walked up to Mr. Barrow, and he's asking, is the body camera off, right? He asked him that, right? And Barrow incorrectly told him that it's on standby. So he was under the assumption that it's on standby, it's not recording, so we finna do what I do. We're gonna do what we gonna do. Not what I'm gonna do. They gonna do what they gonna do, right? And so once Mr. Chapman believes that it isn't being recorded, he goes start bragging about the shooting of the protesters, right? Now, what these videos are to give to the public is that, they used to always say that when black men talk about the situation that we were dealing with police, that we used to make these stories up. Like I said, they say, every man in jail always say he's innocent, right? And then you could be in a situation where there's more police officers and then it's you, and then you're going against the officer's word, and the officer's word is supposed to have more credibility. But then once the video got into play, we're starting to see that even with this being seen and everything is being revealed, right? Let me tell you how they play the game here, right? So you hear on the tape, you say, do you see that? You see me fuck up those motherfuckers, right? I got one of those fuckers. The other one replied, right? So they out there getting it in, having fun, You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if one of them rubber bullets hit you in the right spot. Can it cause you to be dead? But there was a woman out there named LaToya Ratliff. She was shot in the face and suffered a skull fracture, right? And according to her report that she talked about, said Miss Ratliff said that she couldn't eat for a week. She was sustaining injuries that she said left her difficult to see out of the injured eye, and it was filled with blood. So, right, you're doing a lot of damage for people who are protesting, and I guess being angry about what they protesting is against you and then the capacity and profession that you are in. I guess this is a good way to get back at them. But again, you got yourself caught out there, right? And so what she wanted to do is to ask to meet with the police department to discuss, that they're sure that these police officers that did this damage to her will have some accountability, right? In the department's future, right? Right now, based on where everything is going, she know that they can't do all that, right? And so what we see is that the Fort Lauderdale police chief, Rick Magalone, he released, now the video that we've seen, they say that that's the TV version, right? You know how they always do it. They say, well, what you've seen does not really display what took place. So what they did, the chief of the Fort Lauderdale police office, what he did is he released a longer version of the body camera, right? And with the statements to the paper defending the officers, right? So he ended up defending them. Now, he says that the story that shows less than 3 minutes, he said, now that's less than 3 minutes that what you've seen. Now, listen to what he said. They said that there was an 8-minute, 43-second long video. Now, this 8:43 is kind of close to 8:46, right? You know what 8:46 is, right? So he said 8:43, 3 seconds shorter, but he said there's an 8-minute, 43-second long video, and in the entirety of that video, you see that the demonstrators are attacking the officers, and they say, well, if the group of people who are out here peacefully protesting, that wouldn't be an issue, but they choose to use violence instead of peace. So they're antagonizing the situation because they are attacking. Now, again, what I seen on the clip that we seen there, now, again, why not release the 8-minute 43? If you put the 8:43 out there, we can see that. But we do see that protesters, after somebody has, thrown canisters at them, that they picking them up and throwing them back at them. Because you got to also think about this too. Like, okay, should the protesters be out there doing that? Well, again, that's each individual going to do what they got to do, what they feel is necessary. But when you think about this canister, right, and these tear gas, right, and they talking about how this second wave of this so-called coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2 is what I say it is. That's what it really is, right? And when you think about coronavirus and how it talks about lungs and respiratory, again, these combinations of this type of gas is weakening a lot of their immune system, right? So this stuff is allowing them to be susceptible to this coronavirus that you said is now reemerging itself out here, right? So, I don't know if the protesters are aware of all that, but they have been talking about a lot of these articles I have been reading. They were talking about how this stuff can cause them to go into some of the symptoms that would cause the coronavirus, right? And so we see that again, Mr. Morrow and Mr. Chapman have their conversation behind the police lines. And then they said less than lethal rounds and tear gas. Now they say less than lethal rounds. Now again, but look how they are shooting, right? I mean, they just letting shit fly. It's not like, okay, you can downplay and say this is less lethal, right? It's less lethal because they're shooting these bullets. But like she said, her eye. I done seen some videos where people done got their eyes and stuff put out. Now, am I blaming the police? I don't know. What I'm saying is, people are saying that there's unruly, protesters, and I'm not going to be in disagreement because more in this story here, or not this story, but more in the show, I'm going to show you something that is going to actually validate that statement I just made there, right? And so they saying that they demonstrators are throwing plastic bottles at the police again, but does that, okay, so it's tit for tat. You throw something at me, I get you. But when you do it first, are they allowed to, retaliate too, right? So, but it seems in that situation, you're supposed to just comply regardless of what they do and let it get before the judge. But at this state, in the way that they out there now, based on the programming that this country has made, a lot of them is not kind of like the we shall overcome generation. These are the ones that done took, okay, the we shall overcome generation took all the beating and the hosing and the dogging. These are the generations that done passed, these about 2 generations past that generation. Let's say a generation and a half. We won't say 2 generations. We're going to say about almost 2 generations that done passed. And so the fact is that they're not going to lay down so easy, right? They're not going to just take it with a Coke and a smile and shut the fuck up. They're not going to do that. And so that's just what that is there, right? That's just what that is. And so, I think that, having a camera, some people just seem to be getting a little bit like lackadaisical and kind of forgetting. Yeah, you might misread that and come to find out that, again, it was made for us to hear so that we can have these conversations, right? That the stuff that's been talked about with the police, that the things that you don't get to see and the only thing you get to read is their reports and their interpretation of it versus what you see, that here's the cheaper police had to still try to tell you what you've seen is not what you see and that there's more to the story. I'm not saying that it's not, but the point is certain things that you're doing that are getting caught out there, then, it is what it is, right? So that's what that is, right? So, it's just like some of them, like they talked about in Minneapolis, a lot of police officers are quitting because they say that you're going to try to tame me and make me be a different individual. So it's like, we don't want to be that kind of cop. I want to be able to do what I want to do. And if I get caught, then I get, let me go through the rigmarole. But other than that, allow me to do what I try to do to keep the city safe. We're not against that. But again, if law is your job, then law you must follow as well as you administering law, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, maybe that sounds too much like right. So as we talk about police, and again, I've seen at the beginning of the show here, there's a situation where a situation with the police had happened back in 2016. And let me go ahead and show you what we're talking about here, and I should be right back after that. Check this out, y'all. We'll be right back.
Well, Jess, today we heard from the medical examiner who said Gaines was shot a total of 5 times. We also heard from the major who oversaw the standoff that day, and Jay Wendell Gordon, the family's attorney, fired back at him, saying there should have been more negotiating and officers should have dropped their weapons. Video of the 6-hour standoff quickly went viral as Corin Gaines live streamed the confrontation with Baltimore County Police before she was shot and killed.
What are they trying to do?
They trying to kill us.
Now, more than a year later, Gaines' family is seeking $4 million, claiming police were reckless and irresponsible.
We feel confident, as confident as we always did about our facts that we had to present.
The medical examiner testified Friday saying Gaines' death was ruled a homicide and that she was shot 5 times in the chest, back, arm, wrist, and thigh, injuries that are rapidly fatal and most likely caused her to die within seconds to minutes.
I hope that all the facts that we presented resonates with the jury.
Also taking the stand, Major Woodland Wilson with Baltimore County Police, who oversaw the standoff back in 2016. Wilson admitted he was quickly made aware of Gaines' mental illness, and her fiance told them Gaines skipped her medication that day, that Gaines was inadvertently pointing her shotgun at her son. Gaines had said to officers, "Put your guns down and I'll put mine down." The family's attorney, Jay Wendell Gordon, fired at Wilson in the courtroom. "You had all that manpower and not one person could put their weapon down? You couldn't offer any compromise?" Police said Gaines threatened them with her shotgun, leaving officers with no choice but to fire, a decision that will soon be in the hands of an all-female jury.
You know, this is trial, and it creates a lot of anxiety with the family, and you know, there's a lot on the line here.
Today we also heard from a Johns Hopkins doctor who worked on Cody, Corin's son, who was also injured in the shooting. He said by the grace of God he didn't suffer any nerve damage. The trial will pick back up on Monday and is expected to last through next week. Live in Baltimore County tonight, I'm Rick Ritter reporting for WJZ.
All right, so we back, right? So we see that Corrin Gaines' family wins the $38 million appeal in wrongful death suit. You know I'm going to say that again. Corrin Gaines' family wins $38 million appeal in wrongful death suit, right? Now, this story had just came out on July 3rd. And what we see is that the story about Corrin Gaines, for those who didn't know about what happened in Baltimore in 2016, where the Baltimore police had killed her, right? And they won an appeal. Now, again, an appeal means they had to fight for what originally happened the first time in the verdict, right? And this had been an ongoing wrongful death lawsuit, right? And so they end up going before the special appeals court, who ruled in the favor of the family, right? They had to go to a special appeals, right? And what they say about is Corrin Gaines died a horrible, tragic, sadistic death. And we want justice for her, and a family attorney, that was Wendell Gordon, said, adding that he spoke with Corrin's mother this week and she is hopeful regarding this most recent development, right? And so what the story is, and the reason why you're now seeing it, is because according to the attorney, Kevin, I think his name is Ravenell, I think that's his name, it says that the judge has determined that the lower court had abused its discretion, right? Now, again, when they originally did this case, back, I think, in 2018, when they came with the verdict, they had awarded the family the $38 million, right? And so the judges, they say, determination that the lower courts had abused. Now, they went to the lower courts in that appeal, right, after that first verdict, and they abused its discretion. Now, again, you know, when we think about that, and a lot of people who talk about how Donald Trump is putting a lot of, let's say, you know, just pieces of, we're going to say, to the justices, we're going to say he's putting a lot of pieces inside the justice system. And this is part of that, is because when we go before these courts, right, and talking about the abuse in its discretion, well, you know, if you don't have the money to go before, and you have to be afforded certain types of, court-appointed attorneys, you don't really have a chance in there, especially when the public defender is overwhelmed and really gets so numb. And how can he really focus on your case? And is he really there to do that, right? So what ends up happening is a lot of times people end up making deals, right? Selling for some kind of deal. So they end up getting some time, right? So what we end up seeing is when the tossing out of the jury's previous decision. Now, the jury awarded the family the $38 million based on what originally had happened, right? Which resulted in the $38 million in full, right? So they were supposed to have gave them the $38 million in full. But guess what happened, y'all? Guess what happened? So what ended up happening is the grand jury had originally awarded the $38 million to the family. So it went before the grand jury. They sued the Baltimore County Police in 2018. Then the year after, which is 2019, a Baltimore County Circuit Court judge reversed the decision. See, think about that. So it was a circuit court judge, based on what the jury had awarded the family back in 2018, back in 2019, a year later, when they appealed that decision, and the decision was using the argument that the officer should be protected from such liabilities when carrying out their duties. So what are they talking about? What is that qualified immunity doctrine? The qualified immunity doctrine, right? When I hear this being stated as to they should be protected from liabilities, how is it that they are to be protected from liabilities if you are wrong, if you are found to be wrong? How is it that you to be having no liability for the causation of harm and death that you bring upon somebody? But if I, as a civilian, do the same thing, Isn't it the same? Isn't the law still applied to me? Why is there any difference in the law? And that's why the bias in the law and how this country and all over the globe, where people feel like that they have negative energy towards police, is because many people have their own personal stories or being in the presence of these situations and just firsthand knowledge know collectively that's why you have so many people responding the way that they do. So when you start saying not accountable, not liable, because they're carrying out their duties, but then we're starting to hear the term being use of force a lot now, right? Right? So the Baltimore Sun had pointed out in the report that even though after this verdict that I just talking about that you see on your screen of the win of the $38 million appeal, guess what, y'all? The Baltimore Sun went and did some digging, and what they found out is that in their reports, they're arguing that the latest development in the wrongful death suit could actually lead to the amount being reduced. Ain't that something? Significantly, they say. Significantly. Meaning that there is some clause in this, let's say, this appeal, this winning in this appeal, that there's some wording or there's something in there that has got it where the 38 million is not, they're not going to get that lump sum. And they say a significantly reduction of that. Now again, the money is never going to be suffice for the individual, right? But let's, you know what I'm saying, think about that. In replace of a young person, the person who was 23 years old, still had a lot of, change in life, they could have did some other things, but then let's look at what happened, how we even got there, right? Now again, a lot of people might have seen the video when she posted out there, seen it in its entirety without any blurs. And what we've seen is her being in the car, right? And then she's being pulled over by a police officer. Now, again, remember, she's being killed by the Baltimore County Police, right? Because this initiated, because why? Of a traffic violation warrant, right? A traffic violation warrant, right? How do you get from a traffic situation to a deadly situation? Especially when after the incident that happened at the let's say where the traffic situation had to be another day, because now y'all coming to the house. And why is people coming to somebody's house with a goddamn SWAT team for a traffic violation, right? So it seems to me that somebody had some kind of personal vendetta that you gonna go in and, you know what I'm saying, we was not gonna let this you was not getting away with this. So here she is, barricaded in her own home. You see her, she got weapons, got shorty in the house. And could this have been, okay, we're going to see you, we're going to catch you, you're going to be, you know what I'm saying, you can't run, you can, what it say, you can run, but you can't hide. But no, they came with SWAT and everything else. And what ended up happening is Corrin Gaines lost her life. Matter of fact, you even shot the little boy, right? Right? And so what you end up seeing is that the people were widely criticizing, right, the social justice group, and even the ACLUs were even having problems at what happened there. So how is it everybody could see? Once again, we see what's going down, we see what's happening, and guess what? You telling us what we see versus what you're going to tell me is entirely different. How is that possible, right? How is that possible that you're going to tell me what I see and what you do, and then somehow you're going to say, well, we're not going to award you? Then how do you expect that the civilians of society are to uphold the same laws that like it's a difference between when you do something and when somebody else do something, and then try to say that's justice? That's not. That is privilege. That is bias. And so if you can't play a straight open field, then you can't have no game at all, right? I mean, what kind of game is that where your game is slanted and rigged, and the other person is supposed to be competing against you, and you know the game rigged, you know that you cheating, and this person is doing everything they're doing in their natural, will and spirit, trying to compete, and guess what? They may even still be able to beat your ass in the negative. You got to still rig the damn game. So that tells me, in my estimation, that your ass is a goddamn bum. Real talk. Motherfucker gotta be a goddamn bum. Anyway, don't pay no attention to me. That is what it is. But we're going to probably do some more update on that story because, again, $38 million for a 23-year-old, again, over a traffic stop situation, a traffic violation warrant that they end up putting on her after that. That really is normally, what is that, financial, right? So it's either financial or it's either that your shit's suspended. So how did you get a warrant for that, right? Okay, you owe some money? Anyway, but that's what ended up happening. It was kind of a shame to see, but, you know, Corrin Gaines should be part of the pantheon of when people start talking about those who had been killed by police. Her name should definitely be in there, right? And then also the fact that they tried to, did you see how they tried to offshoot and put some blame on herself? When they talked about that she was, you know, something about her medication and her not taking her medication, making her medically dispositioned and her mind, her mental state, right? And that even though when she was loading her gun, the gun somehow was pointed to the shorty that she was going to shoot. You know, damn what she wouldn't try to shoot her damn shorty, right? But again, that's how it is. Kind of like the story before, like every time when we read these reports, people try to slant, again, lie, and not want to tell you. If you ain't gotta lie if it is what it is. You ain't gotta lie. But when you gotta lie, then that just tells exactly what it's about. It's never about what you trying to, you know, report to everybody, trying to make it seem. And so somebody lost their life. Think about that shit over damn traffic. Just like we seen Castile, right? Well, we'll talk about that some more. But anyway, that's the story that came out. Family was now awarded, after going through to the second appeal, awarded the 38, but they're suspect to that 38 million for the simple fact that, according to the Boston Sun, they said in the report that they talked about there's a possibility in the latest development in that wrongful death suit that the amount going to be reduced significantly. So we'll keep an eye on that. This is Black Minds News, and we're going to go to this next story here as we're talking about that. So check this out and be right back.
Are working advance gun bills in Congress in an effort to pressure Republicans and the White House in the wake of several deadly mass shootings. It's a personal issue for many people, even those not touched by violence. 42% of Americans say there is a firearm in their home, according to a Pew Research study. The country's largest and best-known gun rights association, the NRA, is losing board members, but another lesser-known gun organization is thriving. Omar Villafranca went to an Atlanta gun range to meet members of the National African American Gun Association, the largest minority gun group in the country.
Philip Smith remembers the first time he went to a gun range, loaded his 9mm pistol, and pulled the trigger.
I felt free. I had a chance to kind of have some power in my hands.
Smith turned that power into a passion and formed the National African American Gun Association, or NAGA. The first chapter was in Atlanta.
I didn't think I'd get more than 30 people.
In just 5 years, NAGA has become the largest minority gun club in the country. There are more than 75 chapters with more than 30,000 members. And over 90% of the members are black.
We have folks from every walk of life, black doctors, gay, straight, Republicans, Democrats, you name it, we have it. We're not monolithic in why we're all here. We have different reasons.
Why not join the NRA?
Well, the NRA is good for some people that are having that perspective. Our perspective is for black folks.
Nazita Davis joined NAGA to learn how to protect herself. And she's not alone. More than 60% of NAGA members are black women.
I'm usually looked at it like I'm a Martian. I mean, literally, if I come in and I get ready to go into the gun range, people are looking at me like, why is she here? Black women don't shoot, but we shoot.
After black churchgoers were targeted in Charleston in 2015 and the recent shooting in El Paso targeting Mexicans, members say they're prepared to defend themselves.
Do you feel that in this political climate that white nationalists are emboldened to go after minority groups and you need this protection?
I do. Like I said, even though I generalize, it's not just crime in our communities, but it's also a white nationalist. I mean, I do believe they're emboldened. And yes, I want to be armed. I'm not going down without a fight. So I look at it that way. And so by being able to protect ourselves, by training properly and getting our practice and learning how to defend ourselves, at least we will be able to fight back if we are attacked from white supremacists or white nationalists.
NAGA promotes the Second Amendment and social justice, but Smith says he's aware of the dangers of being black and legally armed in America. He pointed to the Philando Castile case in Minnesota, where Castile, who was licensed to carry a gun, was shot and killed by a police officer during a 2016 traffic stop. NAGA immediately condemned the shooting, while Smith points out other prominent gun rights groups like the National Rifle Association did not.
Them not speaking up says more to us than anything. Are you in agreement with that? I couldn't be silent. Tears came out of my eyes when I heard this brother got shot. If you're an organization that wants to get black folks to back you up, that's the best way. Speak out when you see injustice. Don't sit there silently like you don't know what's happening, because we're a very intelligent group of folks.
The group is talking about getting political and endorsing candidates, which could make them a political force. But they're not there yet. It's something they'll discuss at their first national conference next year. For CBS This Morning, Omar Villafranca, Atlanta.
That video of the Castile shooting is still very, very painful and difficult to watch. And I thought he raised a really good point. You know, we're speaking out against it. The NRA had nothing to say at the time when that shooting made national news.
30,000 members, they could be a political force.
I think any coverage of gun owners is useful, because so many people who don't own guns, which are the majority of Americans, they're mystified by who these people are. So it's a great window into that life.
Yeah.
Black power. Black love, black love. Yeah, let's light up. Take it up, back it up, back it up.
So we are back, right? So this was an article that went back in July 10th of 2013. It was talking about what the growing membership since Trump that black gun group considered getting political, right? I'm going to say that again. With the growing membership since Trump, black gun groups considered getting political, right? And so what I did is I showed you a video of the organization called NAGA, right? Right, NAGA, right? That's the name of the organization. And this is for the acronym is for the National African American Gun Association, right? It is introduced to black Americans to guns and instruct them how and to use them, right? Now this had this organization, right? And so the group is an alternative to the National Rifle Association for black gun owners, right? And other notable differences, all right, or differences. Now, the organizers who created this National African American Gun Association said they organized this as a civil rights organization, and their aims is to build community and promote self-protection, right? Now, you've seen in the video, you've seen they have a gun range, they have training facilities, and and it's in Atlanta, right? And it's been this creation of this has been since 2015, and it had a rapid growth, according to like 30,000 members, and they have 75 chapters. That's what you've seen the kind of like on your screen when you've seen that it was showing different states. Those are some of the chapters that are nationwide, and there are a total about 100 chapters, and that's what they do, right? And then they talk about 410 Americans say there are firearms in their household. In a 2017 study by the Pew Research Center, it broke down having guns in a home by race and said that 24% of African Americans say they personally owned a gun, right? Compared to 36% of whites and 15% of Hispanics, right? And black folks and gun usually get a negative stereotype reaction, right? You know how it is, right? Black man with a gun, as like Francis Cress Welsing said, actually, if you got a gun in your hand, you actually got two weapons, because they said the gun between your legs as a black man is a weapon of mass destruction, because that gun in itself can actually annihilate a race, right? So you always locked and loaded in the eyes of those, according to Francis Cress Welsing's teaching, right? But they say that, again, a black man with a gun is the negative stereotype reaction, and because they start thinking, well, why is this guy got a gun, right? And so the owner or the founder of this group, his name is Philip Smith. Again, he is let's say he is the founder and president of this organization. And that what happened is, once he created this in 2015, and he said there was a spike in his membership due to the simple fact that President Trump had won, right? And so attributing some of that growth to a political climate where people feel that the racist view that people have been emboldened by Trump being, put into the position of president, and that the talks and the acts of those views, people are lashing out. And again, as Black Minds News, we do these stories on the daily, and we see these things here. And this is information for those who probably didn't know about it, just in case you didn't, in the climate that we're living in right now. And that they're showing that that some of the organizations say that it has time, this organization, that this NAGA, right, the NAGA that they created, that they believe that it's time for them to have a bigger platform. So what they were doing now is they're starting to contemplating whether they want to form a political action committee, right? So they want to do what their committee is, they want to raise money so that they can start putting that money to back candidates, right, that's sympathetic to the black causes, and that the primary focus of the PAC, right, would be to work solutions between black gun owners and the police, right? So they're trying to work legislation, because what we're learning as we're now becoming a little bit more political astute as to the game of how America works and operate is money walking bullshit talk, right? Right? Did I say that right? Money, bullshit walking money talk, right? Money talking bullshit walk. Okay, you know what I mean. So anyway, so the ideal is for to use this because after the Castile case, what we all had seen on that video, kind of like the George Floyd situation that we went around the country and reverberated, it was known that Castile had a gun permit, and telling the officer that what he had and was going to go to get his wallet, and the nervousness of the police officer with a black man with a gun just made him just let loose, right? He just fired and let loose. And we're seeing the life of another black man, leave right before our eyes on video, right? And yet, as a card-carrying member, having the legalization to have a firearm, you would have thought that the NRA would have backed him. But guess what? They were silent on the issue. Because why? Let's go historically when we look at the NRA and gun rights, and then how these stipulations were always designed to make sure that it was, to keep guns out of our hands, right? And so there's been a lot of gun laws that make it harder, and stipulations, and where legally that a black person have the gun. So that's why they say that the criminals and thugs got guns, because they're not obeying the law. But obeying the law in that sense is prohibiting, because it could be by design. I ain't gonna say probably. We're gonna say it is designed to keep guns out of black people's hands, to make them become, easy and soft targets. But now people are starting to use politics and use the law, and saying that according to the Second Amendment, that the law says that we have the right to bear arms. And so now that you see that a brother like this is went out here and got these this NAGA, it's kind of like niggas, right? NAGA, or NAGA as kings with a double A, right? And he's putting facilities in based on the assumption that a lot of his let's say his customers rose based on the fact that they see the emboldenedness, and to see where we at right now. Again, for those who might be thinking that they need to do some training or places, that right here is information for you on that in itself, right? That you don't have to sit there, as you seen in the video, the sister that was saying that she not gonna go out without a fight, right? She said she training herself so that she can handle herself in situations. And again, Black Mind News, we constantly seeing these situations where people who are disarmed, trying to be loyal, abiding citizen, who have no weapons, who are being guns and stuff pulled on them. Yes, they are being apprehended and they're being charged and so forth, but that will be after the fact. What happens in a situation that I seen a video, and I probably should have put it in here. Did anybody see the video where there was a man with his children, and there was a white woman who tried to fake as if like his vehicle was her vehicle, that caused other white people to come, and they were trying to get him out the vehicle, and he's driving, and they kind of following him, and the kids are frightened in the car, and so it was a soft target move. And so when you're in that situation and you are armless, you are susceptible to being, right, a victim. And so if you fit the criteria, and this is something that you want, here's some information for you. That, again, the thing about this organization that you might want to know is the fact that they are supportive of law enforcement. Now, there's nothing wrong with being supportive of law enforcement when law enforcement is doing and abiding by the rules. And, again, I guess if you're going to be part of this association, I guess you're going to have to be that. And because of them being political and having more people, they can make a block so that they can be, politicians will look at them as something that they can aspire to and work with, right? So Again, we talk about other people who also were Alton Sterling. We've seen the Baton Rouge with that situation. We had E.J. Bradford, right, in Hoover, Alabama, right? And so it looks like that Mr. Smith here wants to try to change the mindset of white folks out here that, you know, the stigmatization of black people having guns as being a negative thing. I say don't waste your time, right? Don't waste your time on that. Because once you really get to the crux and understand that, why you think it's always been that way. Go back to in the beginning of the show where the professor was talking about why they needed guns to have control. So nobody wants to, I guess in the sense, if you've seen yesterday's show, what I think that Mark Goulson said, that in a race, if it's not my intent to harm you, but if it's about racing, you can't cry if I'm winning. That's just part of the game. So if they rig the game to make it in you to be at a, you know, let's say at a negative, then you have to find a way to change that negative and make it to even it up. And so we see that again, this organization been around since 2015. There may be one in your state. They have some information, as you've seen, as I put on there. And there was more to that. But that's what that is, just in case you never heard of that. You know, they're not going to promote none of that, right? They're not going to promote none of that. So the second part, when you did see, right, you seen something else after that. Let me show you something here. We've seen some brothers and sisters who were marching and, you know, they was all in a black suited and booted up, right? So maybe you didn't hear about this, but let me show you this here, right? No, is that the right one? That's not the right one. That's not the right one. There you go. Okay. So you see it says predominantly black armed protesters marched through Confederate Memorial Park in Georgia, right? Say that again. Predominantly black armed protesters marched through Confederate Memorial Park in Georgia, right? So what you saw in that video, should we give another replay of that video? Maybe we should give another play of that, right? Another play of that. Give me another shot of that, Sam. Sam, give me another shot of that, right? Can we get another shot of that? Okay, give another shot of that, right? Get another shot. Okay, another shot. Okay. So give another shot of this. One more again.
Black power. Black love, black love.
Yeah, let's line up. Take it up, back it up, back it up.
So, what you're seeing there again is they're talking about the predominantly black group that was heavily armed. They call them protesters, right? And that's what they were. They marched through Stone Mountain Park, which is near Atlanta. That was on Saturday. And calling for the removal of the giant Confederate rock carving at the site that civil rights activists considered as a monument to what? Racism, right? So that's what you're seeing there with this group that you've seen there. And that what this shows is they say scores of demonstrators dressed in black, paramilitary style clothing, all wearing face scarves, right? Quietly parading several abreast down the walkway at the park, right? Now, I said many of the protesters carried rifles, including military-type weapons, ammunition belts slung over their shoulders, although African Americans appeared to account for the vast majority of the marchers, right? Protesters of various races, men, women alike, were among the group. Now, the leaders of the demonstrators, they didn't hear, they were shouting, according to what they say, in loudspeakers. They challenged to white supremacists who historically have used, let's say, Stone Mountain as a rallying spot of their own. You can hear one of them say, according to what they write in the article, says they don't see no white militia. We're here, you at? Where you at? Where you are? You at home? Let's go. Right? So what they did is they talked to the spokesman, who is the spokesman for the Stone Mountain Memorial Association. His name was John Bankhead. And according to John Bankhead, he said he didn't see nothing wrong. He said they was peaceful protesters. They did according to what we have in the park. He says that, this is a public park. This is a state park. And he says that, they have protests on both sides of the issue from time to time. So it's like you can have, protests. As you say, they say that this park also is held by those who, let's say the KKK, right? They are there as well. So they came there. It was just everybody to make their stance, right? But according to what Mr. Bankhead said, he understands that the sensitivity of the issue here at this park, and that he said, but that they respect and they allow them to come in as long as it's peaceful. So yes, because they were able, dressed black, fatigued up, masked up, got guns, but did they break any laws, right? Did they follow according to the laws? It's not about what you've seen. Was it lawful? Was it a lawful act, right? Which it was, according to even the individual who, again, is the spokesperson for it. And so it says Stonehead, which had been closed, and then for a long week closure over they say the coronavirus, had faced renewed calls for its removal since back from May 25th of 2020, which is George Floyd Day. So, right, everything has tied back to George Floyd, right? And so, according to them, based on Floyd's killing, they helped revive a long simmering conflict between groups seeking to do away with the Confederate statues and sculpture. That's been the main topic that's been going on. A couple of my shows have been talking about it. And I got a even bigger one after this we do with this. But, that's what the advocacy has been for, taking a lot of this stuff that historically, in the way that it has a negative history towards we as black people. A lot of people are using this as, part of, let's say, for them to make reform, right? They're going to use this as part of reform. And so they say that these statues and these things that are commemorative, that are used for the Confederate statues and sculpture as pro-slavery symbols, right? These are the symbols that they use to actually solidify what they've done to us. And so those who believe they honor the tradition and history of the Deep South. So yes, it's history, right? But then there's significance in being in the open like that can be very offensive. It's kind of like saying, could you be having this country having SWAT stickers around amongst all Jews? And many people would say you can't. But see, when it comes to we as BADOS, it seems like that's not the same topic, right? Now, according to this Stonehead Mountain is about 9 stories high, spanning the length of a football field, right? It's about 25 miles east of Atlanta. And is considered to be remains the largest such monument in American Civil War Confederacy, right? Okay. Now, of course, it has the likeness of Jefferson Davis, president of the 11 states of the Confederacy. You have the two of his legendary generals, as Robert E. Lee and Thomas Stonewall Jackson, right? You got them up there, right? And the fact that Stone Mountain has long been held as a symbolism for white supremacy, right? The Ku Klux Klan, which is deemed a hate group, but it actually should be deemed a terrorist group. At one time, I remember them deeming them as a terrorist group, right? They were formed by the Confederate Army veterans, had a history of lynching and terrorizing against black people, held its rebirth ceremonies atop of the mountain in 1915 with flaming crosses, right? Right? And still they say to this day that the Klansmen still hold occasional gatherings in the shadows of the edifice, right? They still use that as part of the symbolic paying homage to the ancestors that, again, from the creation of what they stand for as in white supremacy. So now, albeit now that it met with protesters behind police tape, many of those cross burnings took place around the 4th of July. even on the 4th of July, they were still out there burning crosses, right? Right? Ain't that something, right? So, but you see that those brothers and sisters out there went out there to protest, that knowing that they probably would be out there, and to show a stance in opposition to it. Nothing went down, but that was just a show, right? The stance. Again, this is where we are at this time in the history right now, and people are making that stance about the difference about what they believe. Now, we know that Donald Trump is saying that this country and, taking down and using it as a weapon is something they say they're not going to take it. But just as like this story here is in there, and this didn't really, I don't know, maybe you might have seen this in your town, right? Maybe shown it in the local news or maybe seen it on one of your timelines. But there was another bigger story that they did not talk about. And you know what? We never did go back there, so we never did go back there, right? So go back there first. Yeah, we didn't go back there, so go back there, right? So there was another story that had gone, and this happened here. And I had read another story, but I'll talk about that a little bit too. But let me show you this here, just in case for those who didn't hear about this. So check this out. We'll be right back.
Ringleader, they believe, who tried to tear down the statue of Andrew Jackson in Lafayette Park. His name is Jason Charter, and he was taken into custody. This is a pretty big story, given all of the media attention paid to the attempted destruction of these statues. But for his first court appearance, I want you to take a look at the huge throng of media here. Take a look to my left, to your right, way over there. Absolutely nobody.
That's our own Doug McKelway, my colleague here in D.C. Well done, Doug. Calling out the media blackout after federal officials charged a man they say tried to topple an Andrew Jackson statue in D.C.
Yeah, the media AWOL going silent after weeks of breathless coverage over statues being targeted and torn down across the country.
Statues coming down around the country as America confronts its racist past.
It's not destroying history, it's actually presenting the real history.
Taking active and aggressive steps to actually make us better.
Here to react, media reporter for The Hill, Joe Concha. Joe, welcome to the show as always. So a little media bias to spice up your morning. Why do you think there's no coverage of that ringleader? Or little coverage, I should say, of that ringleader?
Well, first of all, Jed, I think that Doug McKelway is having one hell of a week. I mean, he's the only guy who asked Joe Biden about cognitive decline, and now that report was perfect in the way he set it up, that the media just doesn't care about the fact that Jason Charter is linked and actively supports Antifa. And we don't see Antifa almost get any press coverage whatsoever. I know Lara Logan did something for Fox Nation as far as profiling this group, but I would think, given everything and all the unrest in this country right now, that 60 Minutes or some evening newscast would do a lot more in terms of coverage of Antifa and the destruction that they're doing to this country. But instead, as you said, it's crickets, and there seems to be just complete apathy around this, while statues of Washington and Jefferson and even Lincoln continue to fall throughout this country.
Joe, I couldn't agree with you more. Doug is having a fantastic week. But you know, the other part about Doug's live shot, which was so brilliant to visually illustrate it, we had the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Michael Sherwin, who said basically they've charged more than 150 people already in cases just like this with destruction of federal property, in that the early signs are that many of them are self-radicalized in groups just like Antifa. Jason Charter's Twitter account has him self-identifying with Antifa. Why won't our colleagues in the media and other channels and outlets report on it?
I would think, Griff, that probably because some have actually even defended Antifa. We saw one CNN primetime anchor who actually compared Antifa, and there's a tweet to prove this, to troops storming Normandy. In other words, they're anti-fascist, and we freed the world from Nazi takeover, so therefore they must be equal. And obviously that's simply not the case. This is a very, very destructive group that deserves attention because that's a story, right? I mean, it's the story. Who is doing this and why? Let's see some more coverage on that.
Well, it's because much of the media, Joe, is on their side. The president yesterday was in South Dakota talking to Mount Rushmore, speaking at Mount Rushmore. Here's a part of what he said, and then we're going to get some media reaction. Listen.
Their goal is not a better America. Their goal is to end America. In its place, they want power for themselves. But just as patriots did in centuries past, the American people will stand in their way, and we will win, and win quickly.
Now, just as they did with the president's inauguration, here's the New York Times, the failing New York Times. Breaking news, President Trump delivered a dark and divisive speech at Mount Rushmore, leaning into the culture wars and barely mentioning COVID-19. Dark and divisive is their headline, Joe.
Yeah, when the president and when he was a candidate actually won the Republican nomination, and when he delivered that speech 4 years ago, they love the word dark, apparently, of the New York Times, his tone dark. Donald Trump takes the GOP mantle. Here's the bottom line, and I'll wrap up. The New York Times has not endorsed a Republican candidate for 64 years. That means they endorsed Mondale and McGovern, who won one state each. So that's all you need to know in terms of the disconnect between the New York Times and the American people, guys. A nice bow tie, by the way, Pete. That's going to be a running theme for today, I have a feeling. You're like
it's
Tucker
the 4th of
Carlson,
July.
but different.
It's just well, homage to Tucker always, but just the 4th. You know, happy birthday, America. Joe, thanks a lot.
I got it, man. I got
Thanks,
it.
Joe.
Right, so we back, right? Feds reportedly arrested ringleader in attempt to destroy Andrew Jackson's statue. You know, I'm going to say that again. Reports, Fed reportedly arrested ringleader in attempt to destroy Andrew Jackson's statue, right? So it seems like there's a report that came out that they were hiding, that they didn't really want to talk about. I see nobody in the black corner do anything on it, but an individual named Jason Charter, who the United States Police, Park Police, right, the Park Police officer, who ended up charging with 2 counts of destruction of federal property. Jason Charter is accused of being the leader in an attempt in June to destroy the statue of Jackson, whose legacy as a slave owner and instigator of the infamous Trails of Tears have come under renewed scrutiny from the left amid protests against police violence. Says that Jason Charter is also accused by the FBI of attempting to tear down a statue of Confederate officer Albert Pike. I'm going to say that again. Anybody know what Albert Pike is? Charter is also accused by the FBI attempting to tear down the statue of Confederate officer Albert Pike, right? FBI complained accusing him of pouring an unknown liquid on the statue and standing over the flames as it burned, right? Albert Pike. To keep that in mind, Albert Pike, right? And so it looks like that how they tie him into it, as it says, is that the complaints continue that Charter is clearly visible in different times. So I guess they got him on video. Where he attempts, he removes both statues and cites a tweet from an account on his, on his social media, that tearing down the statues of traitors to the nation is a service to this nation, not a crime, right? Now, one thing would be, why would they, didn't want to talk about it, right? They didn't want to mention that, right? They actually tried to hide this because why, right? Well, I'll get into that. They also talked about there was 4 men who were charged by the Justice Department for destruction of the federal property. All right, there was 4 other people, so they must have turned him in and said that he was. Matter of fact, there was another story that there was a white woman who was one of those lawyers that did the Mellicott cocktail. Did y'all hear about that? Now, they had apprehended her, right? And now they were going to throw that because you remember Donald Trump had said that want to give minimum 10 years for those who were defacing and tearing down these statues. And she came out and stated that it's black men who told her to do it. And black men, you know what I'm saying? She went and turned that role. Ain't that something? I didn't want to put that in here, the story, but then, right? Think about that. She did the old, black people. It wasn't me, it was black people. Now, again, for our children who are out there, those who are out there protesting, right? Out there doing according to what the Constitution say and out there peaceful protesting. There's different elements out that are happening out there, whether a lot of them know it or not, right? You're talking about this individual here is part of Antifa, right? Antifa, right? As you heard Donald Trump sitting there said in that clip there that they want to take power. Now, see, the thing is, it's connotative language. Now, people saying that this is Black Lives Matter, and Black Lives Matter would be supposedly having the face of Oz on it, right? BADOS on it, right? But the organization and this economics and those who are running it, right? We know what they sort of throw. You see the three puppets in the front, but we're talking about who really pushing, pulling the strings. And then you have the infiltration of all these other groups who have their agenda using you as the catalyst, right? And so in it kind of makes somebody kind of a little hesitant because there's a righteous indignation about why you do what you do, but other people are using you. Like in 300, they're stacking the bodies in front. Remember in 300 when they came to fight them and they stacked all the dead bodies using them as a deflection? Well, that's what they trying to do with some of y'all if you ain't paying attention out here, right? And so they saying that these people who are out here, they are very organized, right? Now, again, am I saying that, our people are not, let's say smart enough, have the aptitude to do a lot of the things and thinking about pulling down statues? Because again, they said all you need is some acid, chisels, straps, human chain preventing police from getting to the statues, and it can be done. But is that in the mind state of our children who are out there, right? When they're protesting on behalf of, for the BADOS causes. Now these other people out here, because some of them is just the pot liquor of their people. Let's say it 100. A lot of people who are as the pot liquors of white, who were never really in that echelon of white, whoever's able to use the protection for the complexion, but never was really in the inner circles of the family. And now that they done lost that, now, they want to show their allegiance because now they're saying, hey, we're just like you now, right? And so the scheme, as a matter of fact, anybody ever seen the movie that Richard Pryor played in called Wild in the Streets? If you can ever get that, see that in its entirety, this is kind of what it looked like to me, right? And so, but in the case here, you got these other infiltration people coming in here who have other agendas and using you, and we're hearing the name and they know, right? Other people know they're in there, but when you say Black Lives Matter, it's the new curse word at white folks. And then they want to, as we said, as I did the show yesterday, where Don Jr. was talking about, racism is over. This ain't about racism. So now haven't we noticed that they're trying to use they're using, gay people, Billy Porter, they're using, transes, they're using all kind of things to intervene to try to cut this off from, they have to deal with it. Matter of fact, remember I had been doing the shows talking about the United Nations and how this was going to go to the United Nations. Guess what? They're going to shut the whole United Nations down, right? They're going to close that whole thing using coronavirus now. But they was about to put this before the United Nations, right? So it's a lot of diversion going on, trying not to have to deal with the true reason what this is. Yes, police is one part of it, but this is a systemic, persistent, long, historical, mischaracters of justice, not just with the police, but just entire of our existence here in the United States. And so they're trying to find ways to get around it. So you got these people infiltrating, doing what they're doing to divert it. And it's, again, as I said in one show before, it's like, do we drop this Black Lives Matter as the organization? Because does this cause, what they're trying to do is twist it and turn it in such a way that when they end up doing what they're talking about, rule of law, by trying to make you classify as a terrorist, right? They won't say the KKK is terrorist, but they want to say Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group, right? Going back to BIE, right? Black identity extremists, right? Those with black identity, you're extremists because you're trying to be black. Remember, I told you that when you talk about black power and how black power seemed to be the most, so there's a lot of shit, right? And so according that they said that law enforcement sources said that they told Fox that this Jason Charter has connections to Antifa, right? And it was that ABC reported that the identity as a member of Antifa in social media posts, right? And so, again, Antifa is a common target for conservatives, particularly President Donald Trump and Attorney General William Barr, who claimed it was behind much of the violence of the protests sparked by the death of George Floyd. And you see that Trump has attempted to designate Antifa as a loose conglomeration of the left-wing activists, anarchists, and terrorist organization, right? But you also have black people in the middle of that, right? So you got you in the middle, them on the left, and them on the right. So that leaves you in the middle. So leaving you as the body for 300, right? But you got legal experts who say that the domestic organization cannot be deemed as such as a terrorist group, right? Domestic organizations. These are within the country, but you somehow try to find a way to deem that. It's just like when Minister Louis Farrakhan did his speech and how they went out and talked about he was like Hitler. I'm like, wow, God, really? This man ain't killed nobody. This man ain't got nobody, okay? But the words that are coming out of his mouth is making you deem him as Hitler. It's like, wow, isn't that slanderous in itself by saying that? Where's your actual proof to it? But you can just say it and then, you see what I'm saying? How it's just bias about shit. And so young ones got to be more mindful out here and understand that this thing is not just you. And just because you have people out here that you want to have, this affiliation and kumbaya moment with them, they may be put there as a way to turn the faucet away from the direction it was going and to dwarf your whole movement. See, it's okay. Remember in Malcolm X, when Malcolm was coming out of the university and the white woman said, well, can white people help you? Can we join you? He said, you can't join us, but if you want to donate, and you could do things like that, but you can't join. We got to learn to take care of ourselves first, then when we worry about letting everybody else in. That's why you know that the Black Lives Matter organization is in a FUBU, which is for us, by us. That's how you know that, because what you see out there, the infiltration that's going out there, because again, at times you see there's way more white people out there. They know them white people out there doing all that shit with them damn statues and doing all this stuff. Now the looting part might be us, but all this, defamation, defacing and vandalism and all that. Black people who all caught up with seeing them and monkey see, monkey do, that's your ass. And just like this individual here, right? This individual here, this Jason Charter, who, if you go back and look at that video, I don't know, did I even put that video on here? But there was a video, there was a brother that was up there, had the rope around the neck of Andrew Jackson. Now, here you is out there with all these cameras and being seen and not thinking that the reason why they didn't want to put this and publicize this on to make this white boy as the face of that, because it takes away from the fact that they're trying to make you the poster, the bad guy. So now that y'all out there doing all the shit that y'all doing, and if you get your face out there, guess what's going to happen? They're going to posterize you, and they're going to be able to use that to divert, to get away from where the real movement is. So I don't know who's talking to you out, who's leading y'all out there, but this is some of the things they need to be looking at, right? So one last thing on this is the fact that when they talk about these, when they talk about the people who they talking about, they taking down, when they talking about Ulysses S. Grant, right? And it was Trump that went into that. When they started talking about that, he went into the removing the statue of the Confederate Robert E. Lee in Charlottesville in 2017. He called that Lee, and this is what Trump has said, quoted, said the greatest strategic military mind perhaps ever, right? Stonewall Jackson, right? And based on what he said, he asked the cabinet members, don't y'all think this is fair for me to say that? So again, no matter how rootless how much history may say certain things about them, they always got the kickstand to make them feel, or to look better. But when it come to us, we ain't shit from the rootin' to the tootin', right? That is how, people is, man. But then they always say it's square dealing, fair dealing, and, it's Independence Day. You got the same thing and the same opportunities, the same as I got. But it ain't the same. So they don't want to admit that. So y'all that's out there, be aware of this shit, right? They said Albert Pike. Ain't Albert Pike got something to do with that damn, what is Albert Pike, right? Did I even get into that? Huh? Did I even get into that? Who's Albert Pike? Anybody know who Albert Pike is? Y'all know who Albert Pike is, don't you? Y'all don't know who Albert Pike is? All right, let me go ahead and tell you about Albert Pike, right? Now, Albert Pike, right? When you think about Albert Pike, what you know about him, right? All right, it's at that time of the day, right? So we're gonna finish out with the Albert Pike, and then we're gonna go on here, right? So this is the Mason talk, right? So it was one thing to deal with the Andrew Jackson part, but now you starting to mess with, You're starting to mess with the secret society, And they can't have that. You touching that was a no-no. So that's why they came at him so hard. Otherwise, it would have just been that statue of Andrew Jackson. That's enough. But you went after Albert Pike. And Albert Pike is not the one that they want you dealing with, right? They want you to leave Albert Pike alone, right? And so that's why. But they didn't promote it through all the major networks because it was going to have a white boy's face. Okay? So I did this, okay? So we want to thank each and every one of you for coming here and watching Black MINDZ News. And thank you each one kindly. And just in case you didn't do what you're supposed to do, we give you a little reminder as we get up out of here. Check this out. All right, again, Black MINDZ News. I want to thank each and every one of you for clicking on the video. Share, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Again, when you see your brother, greet your brother. What's good, brother? If you can't do that much, see your sister. What's good, sister? If you can't do that much, you can at least give the universal nod. We're living in a day and time when we come to those crossroads where it seems like somebody is seeking for our demise. So it is incumbent that we take care of our brother, be your brother's keeper, and understand that we are only in this together. I understand that there's some of us who have allies and believe that our allies are going to go all out with us. Sometimes you have to ask these questions with these people that you think are your allies. It's kind of like what we do in the story today, looking at the fact that you got people who are out there protesting and looking like they in support of you, but may have their own agenda. So how do you weed out those, what they say, the straw from the chaff, the wheat from the chaff? You have to vet people. I hear some people who say that we can't get into this bloodline to find out who's true blue. But that's how you get infiltrated, when you assume that you know somebody and say you make an ass out of you and me, and then in the dire situation that we in, everybody need to be accounted for. So if you're in these organizations and you think that the movement that you're doing is for the betterment, but understand and know all you can about what it is and who's all involved, so that you can have be more informed about what you are in and what it's about, then to be later on to find out that you've been bamboozled, led astray. See, because everybody seems to like know that the greatest history there is seems to be the one that's right here in the United States. And everybody is trying to find a way to actually usurp you, right? Think about it. We're looking all in history. It's nothing about people being there usurped of some of their identity. The people who call themselves Jewish usurp that, which is somebody who was before them. Another people who are trying to take on the identity saying that they are the indigenous people of this land. You got another people, you know what I'm saying? It just goes on and on and on and on. But guess what? Black people are now trying to get right. We have no choice. Some people are looking for us to just disappear. So if we don't stand up for the rights that we're not even asking, we're demanding. So with that being said, this is Black Minds News, y'all. And to the next show, y'all. To the next show.